Ray stepped off the shuttle with dust on his boots and curiosity in his eyes. He had taken a job on a distant alien farming colony, far from Earth, far from noise. The place was peaceful, full of soft winds, purple skies, and creatures that glowed. At night, the locals were kind, quiet, and always watching him like they knew something he didn't. The first warning came from the old alien farmer who gave him shelter. "Never leave your door open during the Red Moon Week," the farmer said with a grave face. Ray chuckled and asked why, but the old man just stared and muttered, "Because." Of the sister, no one ever gave more than that, just a whisper, just a shake of the head. He heard the same thing from others too, a baker, a trader. Even a child tugged at his sleeve and said, "Shut your door, mister." But Ray was a man of reason, not superstition. He had fought in wars, faced hunger, and seen too much to fear a bedtime story. One evening, just a day before Red Moon Week, he sat outside his little house. The alien sun had set, and the air had a strange warmth. He looked up and saw the moon turn slightly red, glowing like a slow-burning fire. The villagers had already locked themselves in, windows sealed, lights off. Ray stood outside, arms crossed, amused by how scared everyone seemed. He walked inside, cooked a small dinner, and kept the door open to let the air in. "I'm not scared of the wind," he joked to himself. He had no idea the wind carried more than just warm air tonight. That night, everything felt different. The silence outside was too deep, like the whole world was holding its breath. Ray lay in bed, eyes open, listening. Then he smelled something sweet. Sharp and strange, like burning fruit and honey mixed together. He sat up, blinking, sniffing the air. "What the hell is that?" he muttered, getting up and walking to the door. The scent grew stronger, wrapping around his mind like a warm hand. It made his skin tingle and his thoughts blur. He walked to the open door and looked out. Nothing but soft red light and quiet. Shadows. Then he saw it, movement, slow and smooth. Just beyond the trees, a tall figure, graceful and glowing under the red moonlight. Ray's heartbeat quickened. Not from fear, but something else. The figure stepped closer, and he saw her face, part beauty, part danger. She was alien, yes, but stunning in a way that made the air feel heavier. Long limbs, glowing eyes, silver skin that shimmered like water under the stars. She stopped at the edge of the light, her chest rising and falling quickly. Her eyes locked onto his, and she whispered something in her own language. Ray didn't understand the words, but the meaning was clear. She was here for him. His door had been open, and she had followed the scent of a human. He stepped back, unsure, his mind racing. Then she took a step forward, slow and smooth. Like a predator with soft paws, she was. Breathing hard, eyes wide, her hands trembling. Ray could see she was struggling to hold herself back. "You shouldn't be here," he said in a low voice. But she only tilted her head, her lips parting as if in pain or confusion. The warmth in the room grew, the scent stronger now, pulling at something deep inside him. Ray realized this was not a joke, not a story, not something to laugh off. He reached for the door to close it, but stopped. She looked hurt, as if shutting the door would break her completely. And for reasons he couldn't explain, he didn't want to hurt her, so he left. It opened, just a little longer. Outside, the red moon rose higher, and the sister took one final step into his home. Ray didn't move, didn't speak. He knew that his life had just changed forever, but he didn't know how much yet. The wind moved softly through the alien trees, but inside Ray's home, the air felt heavy. He stood frozen, watching the strange girl step fully into the room. Her skin shimmered like it was made of soft metal. Her breathing was loud and uneven. She looked at him not like a stranger, but like something deeper had pulled her here. Ray's instincts told him to run, to close the door, to do anything, but he didn't move. The scent that filled the air wrapped around his thoughts like a fog. It wasn't just sweet, it was alive, crawling into his chest, into his spine. He blinked, trying to stay clear-headed, but the heat in the room kept growing. The girl stepped closer. her eyes glowing brighter under the red moonlight. She opened her mouth like she wanted to say something, but only a soft sound came out. Not words, not language, just need. Ray backed up a step, his foot knocking over a chair she flinched at. The sound, then crouched slightly, her muscles tight, like a wild animal on edge. Ray raised both hands slowly, trying to show he meant no harm. "You all right?" he asked, unsure why he even spoke. The alien girl tilted her head, breathing even faster now, her skin beginning to shimmer with sweat. Something wasn't right with her, that much was clear. She looked strong, but she also looked lost, like she was fighting something inside her body. Ray noticed her fingers twitching, her jaw clenched as if she was holding something back. Then she took another step and whispered, "Hot. Too hot." In broken English, her voice was strange, soft but shaking, like she was in pain. Ray grabbed a glass of water and slowly offered it to her. She stared at it for a moment before taking it with trembling hands. The moment her fingers touched his, a spark ran up his arm like lightning. He gasped, and so did she, pulling the glass back quickly. Their eyes met again, this time longer, deeper. Ray felt a strange pull toward her, and he knew something bigger was happening than just a heat wave. She drank the water too fast, some of it spilling down her chin and neck. "I didn't mean to come," she said, struggling with the words. The door was open. "I followed the scent." Ray felt cold sweat run down his own neck. This wasn't just about curiosity or danger, this was about survival. She looked around his small home like it was the safest place she'd ever seen. Then her knees gave out, and she collapsed onto the floor. Ray rushed to her side, unsure of what to do. Her skin was burning hot, and her eyes rolled back for a second. He touched her shoulder, and her hand grabbed his wrist instantly. "Don't leave," she whispered. Barely able to speak, Ray nodded slowly, even though his heart was pounding. He could feel her body shaking, like a storm was trapped inside her. Suddenly, a loud growl echoed from the woods outside. Ray turned his head fast toward the door, now only halfway open. There was something else out there, something walking slowly in the dark. He stepped forward, peered into the shadows, but saw nothing, just silence and red light. When he turned back, the girl had curled up on the floor, shivering and breathing heavily. She wasn't dangerous, not yet, but she was changing, and he didn't know how or why. Ray sat down beside her, unsure of everything except one thing. He couldn't throw her out. She had come through the heat, through the scent, through the dark, all for some reason. As her breathing softened and her eyes closed for a moment, Ray stayed alert. The growl outside didn't return, but the silence was no longer peaceful. He kept the door slightly open, unable to decide what to do. The girl's hand reached out slowly and rested beside his foot, not touching, just near Ray. Looked at her face, alien, yes, but tired, scared, and very real. He thought about all the warnings he ignored, all the doors he didn't close. And now she was here, lying on his floor, too hot to stand, too tired to speak. And he was the only one who had left his door wide open. The sun never truly rose on this alien planet. It just glowed softly behind clouds that never moved. When Ray woke up, the first thing he noticed was that the strange scent hadn't left the air. It was still there, warm and sharp, floating gently like invisible fire. The second thing he noticed was that she hadn't moved from the floor. Elira, if that was even her real name, still lay curled up near the wall. Her breathing was slower now, less wild, but her body still trembled sometimes. Ray rubbed his face, stood up slowly, and looked down at her again. She looked peaceful now, not dangerous, not like the creature that had entered his house last night. She opened her eyes before he could speak. "I didn't mean to scare you," she whispered, her voice low and raw. Ray didn't answer right away. He just poured water into a small cup and handed it to her. She sat up with effort, her hands still weak, and drank it slowly this time. "I don't know what's happening to me," she said, staring at the floor. Ray crouched beside her and said nothing. The moment felt too strange for normal words, but something in him wanted to understand. Her, even if he couldn't yet. Illyra took a deep breath, then spoke again. My body is entering heat phase. I was warned it might be early this cycle. Ray raised an eyebrow, but didn't interrupt. She continued. Usually I would be kept in a safe room by my people, but I ran. Why? Ray asked quietly. Illyra looked up, eyes glowing slightly. In the dim light. Because I didn't want to be locked away like a beast, she said, voice trembling. And I wanted to know what the humans smelled like during a red moon. Ray blinked, unsure how to respond. He didn't expect her to be so honest, so. Curious, Illyra placed a hand on her chest, breathing through her nose. Now I can't go back, she said, almost to herself. Not until the heat passes. What happens if you don't cool down? Ray asked carefully. Illyra looked at him with tired, sad eyes. I burn inside, my mind slips, instincts take over. It's like drowning while standing still. Ray swallowed hard, the thought making him uneasy. She tried to stand, but her knees failed again. Ray caught her before she hit the ground. Her skin was too warm, too soft, and the touch sent a jolt through both of them. Illyra gasped and clung to his arms, eyes wide with fear and something else. I didn't mean to come here, she said again, but when I smelled you I couldn't stop. Ray helped her sit on the couch and moved back quickly. He needed space, distance, but his heart beat too loud to ignore. He had been alone on this planet for weeks, now he wasn't. Outside, the wind picked up, bringing with it new scents, new warnings. Illyra turned her head sharply toward the window, her eyes narrowing. They'll come looking for me soon, she whispered. Ray leaned against the table, arms crossed. Who will? My sisters, she said with a shiver. They know I've entered heat, and they'll track me. Ray stepped to the window and looked out into the trees. Nothing yet, but the silence had returned, the kind that felt like a held breath. He knew now that this wasn't just about him and her. She wasn't just a guest or a lost girl. She was something sacred, something wild, and he had broken the rule, the one everyone warned him about. He left the door wide open during Red Moon Week, and now the sister was here, and soon others would follow. Illyra looked at him, her voice softer now. I'll try to control myself, Ray. I don't want to hurt you. He nodded slowly, unsure if he believed her or himself anymore, but deep down, something had already begun between them. Not just heat, not just danger, but a strange bond. And as the light outside turned to deeper red, Ray knew one thing for sure. This wasn't going to end quietly. The sister wasn't done yet, and neither was the story she had brought to his doorstep. Ray dreamed of fire, not the kind that burns wood, but the kind that lives in blood. He woke up sweating, heart racing, and for a second, he forgot where he was. Then he turned his head and saw her again, Illyra, sitting cross-legged near the window, staring into the morning fog. She was wrapped in one of his old jackets, her silver skin dim in the early light. She didn't move when he sat up, didn't speak either. Her body looked calmer now, like the storm inside her had quieted. Just enough to think. Ray rubbed the sleep from his eyes and asked, You all right? Illyra nodded slowly, but didn't turn her head. I dreamed of you, she whispered, voice hollow like an echo. Ray didn't know what to say, so he said nothing. Outside, the trees made no sound. The fog pressed against the windows like thick smoke. Something about today felt heavier than the others, like time itself had slowed. She finally turned to look at him, her glowing eyes softer than before. I think you bonded to me last night, she said quietly. Ray's eyebrows drew together. What does that mean? Illyra took a breath, like it hurt to say the next words. My kind. We bond during heat, she said. Not always fully, but sometimes. The connection starts without meaning to. Ray's throat went dry. And what happens if that bond grows? Illyra's lips parted, unsure whether to speak or stay silent. If the bond completes, I won't be able to live without you, she said. And neither will you. He stood up fast, stepping back like the words were knives. I didn't choose this, he said firmly. I know, she replied, eyes low. That's what makes it real. Ray turned away, needing space, needing answers. He stepped outside to breathe, forgetting for a moment that others might be near. The fog moved around him like a blanket, thick and cold. Then he heard it, a sound he hadn't heard in days. Footsteps, too many, too light. Moving fast through the forest, he turned around and rushed back inside, slamming the door shut behind him. They're here, he said breathlessly. Alira stood up too quickly, stumbling before catching herself. They followed my scent, she said. They're not here to rescue, they're here to take me back. Ray looked at her, then at the door, then back at her again. You want to stay here? Alira didn't answer with words. She stepped forward, reached out, and touched his chest with her fingers. That simple touch lit up something inside him like a slow fire. He grabbed her hand gently and whispered, Then we fight for it. Alira's eyes glowed brighter, her breath catching like she hadn't expected those words. You don't understand what they'll do to you, she said. They'll test you, scare you, maybe kill you. Ray's jaw tightened. They'll have to try. Suddenly, a knock sharp, 3 times, then silence. Ray froze, staring at the door like it might break open any second. Another knock, this one slower, heavier, almost polite. Alira's voice shook. That's not my sisters, that's a scout. Ray looked around for anything he could use to defend them. A pipe, a broken piece of metal, even the chair in the corner. But something told him brute force wouldn't help against what stood outside. This was about proving something, not just surviving. Alira stepped toward the door, then paused. They'll test you, not with weapons, but with truth, she said. Answer wrong, and the bond will break. Ray nodded, shoulders tense, heart loud in his chest. I'll answer with what I know. And what I feel, he said. If that's not enough, then I don't want it. The door creaked slowly as Alira opened it halfway. Standing there was not a beast, not a soldier, but a tall, elegant woman with the same silver skin. Her eyes glowed cold, and her face held no kindness. Alira, she said in a voice like smooth ice. Step aside. But Alira didn't move. Ray stepped up behind her. Meeting the woman's gaze without fear, the visitor looked at him, then smiled. Slightly. So you're the reason her heat spiraled, she said. Interesting. Ray held his ground, feeling the weight of 1,000 silent thoughts. Behind him, Alira whispered one word, careful, but Ray didn't flinch. This was just the beginning, and he had already left the door wide open. The stranger's smile didn't reach her eyes. She looked at Ray like he was something on the floor, something beneath her boots. Alira stood stiff beside him, her breathing shallow, her voice locked inside her throat. The air outside the door had changed. It wasn't just thick with fog anymore. It was thick with judgment. You don't look like much, the woman said coldly, stepping forward without invitation. Ray didn't move aside, didn't flinch. His eyes met hers with calm defiance. The woman raised one perfect eyebrow and then turned her gaze to Alira. You bonded with this? She asked, like she was insulting a broken machine. Alira's voice cracked as she answered. I didn't plan to, but you did, the woman said sharply, stepping into the room. Her presence colder than the wind. Ray glanced at Alira, then back at the visitor. Who are you? He asked, forcing his voice to stay steady. The woman didn't look at him when she replied, I am Viren, first sister of the Flame Court and keeper of the sacred bonds. Ray frowned. Sounds fancy. Viren's lips curled slightly, but there was no humor in her smile. Do you know what you've done, human? She said, circling slowly around him. You left your door open during Heat Week, let a sister cross your threshold, shared scent and breath with her. Ray turned as she moved, never letting her get behind him. I didn't force anything, he said. She came on her own. She was in heat, Viren snapped. Her choice was clouded by instinct, and you by stupidity. Alira stepped forward then, her voice stronger now. I knew what I was doing, she said, and I still want to stay. Viren turned to her sharply, but this time there was Something else in her eyes, fear, maybe, or surprise. Ray could feel the tension building, not just in words, but in the air itself. It was like the room had become a stage, and every breath might tip it one way or the other. Viren finally stopped pacing and faced them both. "There is only one way this can end without blood," she said slowly. Ray narrowed his eyes. "Go on. You'll undergo a test." Viren said, "The trial of restraint." Alira's face paled, her body tensing like she'd been punched. "No," she whispered. "That's forbidden. He's not one of us." Viren nodded. "Exactly why he must prove himself?" Ray asked. "What kind of test?" Viren looked him in the eye, and for a second, there was no fog, no mystery. "Your instincts against hers," she said. "You will be placed together, watched closely, surrounded by scent and heat. But you must not touch her, not once. Not even by accident." Alira's lips trembled. "That's cruel." Viren didn't blink. "It's tradition." Ray exhaled slowly, then looked at Alira. "If this is what it takes to keep you safe," he said, "I'll do it." Later that hour, they were taken to a chamber deep below the village cliffs, a place carved from stone, lit by soft blue. Flames that gave no heat. Viren stood at the exit, her arms crossed as the door sealed shut behind them. Alira looked at Ray with wide, scared eyes. "I won't be myself in here," she warned him. "The heat will come back stronger." Ray nodded, his jaw set. "I'll remember who you are," he said. "Even if you forget for a while." Moments passed, then the room began to change. Warmth crept in from the walls, slow and pulsing, like a heartbeat growing louder. The scent returned, first stronger than before, richer, deeper. Alira gasped, stumbling to her knees, her breath turning into soft whimpers. Ray stayed still, not moving an inch. His fists clenched at his sides, her skin shimmered again, her eyes glowing like fire beneath water. She crawled toward him, not with desire, but with desperation. Tears filled her eyes, her voice broken as she said, "Please, don't make me go through this alone." Ray's body screamed to reach out, to comfort her, but he didn't. He stood like stone, tears welling in his own eyes as he whispered, "I'm here. I'm still here." The trial had begun, and time was now their enemy. Every second longer than the last, every breath heavier than the one before. He had entered the fire by choice, and now he would burn beside her, but never once would he break. Not for his own pain, not for hers, because some doors, once opened, don't just let things in. They change the one who opened them forever. Asterisk. The walls were glowing now, not with light, but with heat. Ray could feel the warmth pushing into his skin, into his bones. His shirt clung to him, soaked in sweat, and his breath came slower with each passing minute. Across the room, Alira knelt on the floor, trembling like her body was too small to hold the fire inside it. She had stopped speaking an hour ago, or maybe two. Time didn't work right in this place, not when every second felt like an hour. Her eyes were glassy, her voice gone, but she kept looking at him like he was the only thing left keeping her from losing everything. And he hadn't moved, not once, not even when she cried out in pain. Ray's legs burned, his muscles shook, but he stayed still. His only goal was simple: don't touch her. Even when she begged, even when her hands reached out blindly in the heat, even when the room felt like it was made of fire and longing. Viren watched from a high, hidden glass slit in the wall, her expression unreadable, her hands folded behind her back. She had expected the human to fail in the first hour. She hadn't expected this. Ray's lips cracked from the heat, but he whispered her name again. "Alira." She blinked slowly, like his voice was pulling her back from the edge, but her body moved without control now. Her instincts stronger than her mind. She crawled closer, inch by inch, every movement shaking with hunger, not for food, but for connection. Ray felt her shadow cross his boots, her breath warm against his knee. One wrong move and the bond would break, or worse, complete in the wrong way. He looked at the ceiling, at the flames, at anything but her pleading eyes, Then something strange happened. Alira stopped right at his feet. She sat back on her heels, breathing slowly, her face tilted upward like she saw something invisible above him. Her hands fell to her sides, and for the first time, her body relaxed. The room grew silent. The flames held still. Ray looked down and saw her crying, not in pain, but in release. "I feel it," she whispered. "I feel peace." Ray sank to his knees slowly, still not touching her. She smiled at him weakly, her eyes clearing just a little. "You didn't break," she said. "You didn't run, didn't touch, didn't give in." Ray smiled back, though his whole body felt like it might collapse. "I said I'd stay," he replied, "and I meant it." Suddenly, the heat began to drain from the room. The blue flames dimmed, the air cooled, the scent faded. A low chime echoed from the walls, and the sealed door behind them slid open. Varen stepped inside, her eyes wide with something close to disbelief. She looked at Alira first, then at Ray. "Impossible," she muttered. "No male has passed the trial of restraint in centuries." Ray didn't reply. He simply helped Alira to her feet without touching her skin. They walked out together, slow but strong, side by side. The villagers were waiting outside the trial chamber. When they saw Alira standing, clear-eyed and steady, a hush fell over them. She looked at them all, then took Ray's hand not out of heat or hunger, but out of truth. "This is the one who stayed," she said. "This is the one who made me whole." Varen stepped forward, placing a symbol on Alira's wrist, an ancient sign of earned respect. Then, to everyone's shock, she placed the same mark on Ray's hand. He had become part of their story, part of their legend, not because he fought, but because he refused to fall. As they walked back to the village together, the skies above turned from red to gold. Alira leaned against him, not out of need, but out of comfort. The fire in her blood had burned away the pain and left only the bond behind. And Ray, once warned not to open his door, had opened something far greater instead. The first thing he noticed when they returned to the village was silence, but not the cold kind. It was the silence of respect, the kind that came when every eye was watching something sacred. Ray didn't feel like a hero, his legs still weak, his chest heavy from everything they'd endured. But Alira walked beside him proudly, no longer trembling, no longer in pain. She wore the flame symbol on her wrist like a crown. The other sisters, once cold, once proud, now bowed their heads when she passed. Some still whispered, unsure how a human could survive something meant to break even their strongest. But no one questioned the truth anymore, not after what they had seen. Ray stopped in front of the gathering square, unsure what to do. He had come to this planet just to help with crops, to escape noise and war and memories. Now he stood beside an alien woman who had nearly melted his soul, and somehow, through pain and heat and trial, he had found something pure. Alira raised her hand and the crowd went quiet. Her voice rang out, not as a sister in heat, not as a victim of instincts, but as someone reborn, someone unshackled from tradition. "This man," she said, "faced the fire not with force, but with heart." Ray shifted uncomfortably, never used to so many eyes on him, but Alira reached for his hand and held it, steady and proud. "The old ways told us to fear the bond between human and sister," she continued, "but I say today the bond saved me." A murmur swept through the crowd, then silence again. Varen stepped forward slowly, her expression unreadable. She looked at Alira first, then at Ray. Then she did something no one expected. She knelt. The crowd gasped, even Alira froze. Varen lowered her head and spoke calmly. "I have lived many cycles, and never have I seen the trial endured without blood." She lifted her gaze. "The bond is real, and so is the choice." Ray didn't know what to say, so he simply nodded. He hadn't come for praise, hadn't come for power, but something inside him whispered that he was no longer just a visitor here. He had been changed, burned, tested, and remade. Later that evening, the village prepared a firelight ceremony. It was quiet, with food, music, and glowing lights that floated above their heads. Children danced while elders whispered tales about the human who stood in the fire and never blinked. Ray stood at the edge of it all, unsure whether to join or watch. Alira found him there, holding 2 cups of warm fruit water. She handed him one and sat beside him. Close, but not too close. "You still thinking about the door?" she asked gently. Ray smiled. "Yeah," he said. "I opened it without knowing what I was letting in." Alira sipped her drink and leaned her head on his shoulder. "And what do you think now?" Ray looked up at the red moon glowing faintly in the sky. "I think that open door saved both of us." She smiled and nodded. "There will be more heat cycles," she said. "They never stop," Ray chuckled softly. "Then I guess I better keep my door open." Alira looked up at him, her eyes softer than they'd ever been. "No," she said, touching his chest lightly. "Not the door, your heart." Ray didn't speak after that. Some things didn't need words. The firelight danced in the dark as the two of them sat still. Not strangers, not victims, not rules to be followed, but something entirely new. And somewhere in the woods, where the warning signs still hung crooked, the wind blew gently, no longer carrying danger, only the scent of something sacred that had survived the fire.